And today I have the absolute pleasure to be in conversation with Tsitsi Mutsi. Now, it's so important that we have this conversation. And she is known as a wealth coach. She's been in the wealth management industry for over 10 years. So not someone who started last week, last month, whatever. She's been doing this for over 10 years. Having overcome her own personal financial challenges, she turned that around, created her own blueprint that she shows people exactly how to manage your money, how to create wealth for the long term, not just for the short term. Titsi, thank you so much for jumping onto the Business and Wealth Show.
Thank you so much, Mac. I mean, if I ever need someone to do an intro for me, I'm calling you.
No
It's
problem.
phenomenal.
For you, anytime. For you, anytime
Oh,
at all.
thank
Fantastic.
you.
It's great to have this conversation because one of our mutual friends said, "Hey, Mac, you need to speak." And I spoke with you. I thought, "Wow, this is great stuff. Let's podcast." So thank you
Yeah,
for jumping on. Now, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background, and how you got into doing the work you're doing now.
sure. Okay. So, as Mac has said, my name is Tsitsi Mutiti. I have been working in the wealth management space for over 10 years now. And the journey into wealth management was not what I expected. I really did not want to be in financial services because in my head at the time, I was in my late 20s. I thought to myself, well, this isn't a space for me. I don't have lots of money. I don't come from lots of money. All the things that I had, everything was just no, 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 no. I was not ticking any of those boxes. I believed I didn't go to the right schools, etc. And also, the year that I joined financial services, it was a year after I'd moved to the UK from Zimbabwe. So you can imagine, I'm coming from Africa as well. The Zimbabwean economy had been falling apart, and it was just I just thought money, me, finance, nah, it's not a place for me. But I was offered a role as a secretary for a team of investment managers, which I accepted reluctantly. I wanted another role, which was for an international firm, so nothing to do with finance. And after a few weeks, I said to myself, I'm going to leave this place within 3 weeks. It's been almost 18 years now.
You've been 3 years, 3 weeks into 18 years now.
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine? So, yeah, I got so interested, Mac, in what I was seeing happening around me. Um, People were talking about money and dealing with money in a way I had never experienced before. And they were making it grow, but not only that, they were growing it, they were protecting it, and it was actually being passed down to the next generation in some instances.
Right.
We were looking after funds for families, and these accounts had been set up 10, 20, 30, many years ago. And it just blew my mind because I thought to myself, how come no one's ever told me about this? How come I didn't hear my parents talk about this? And if I rewind a bit to my earlier years, my parents actually passed away when I was quite young.
Okay.
So I experienced that transition of, having the breadwinners there, and then, the bit where inheritance is supposed to happen. So there was some sort of inheritance that happened. We got the house, the family home, but
Right.
slowly that kind of disappeared because we were living in a country where the economy was I'd say, falling apart. And,
Sure.
and also everyone was just struggling with money and finance at that point in time because there was such an upheaval when it came to the economy. So my experience of wealth was, yes, there is wealth because, I grew up in a fairly upper middle class family, but my experience was that wealth disappears. So wealth really isn't something that one should focus on. And then fast forward, several years, I'm now in this environment where it's like, yeah, wealth is, you should focus on it. You can build it, you can grow it, you can pass it on to the next generation. And I just said to myself, I want to know more about this.
Indeed. A lot of people, when people talk about wealth, they have a negative connotation to it, almost like a dirty thing. Don't talk about this. But essentially, it's so, so important. And a lot of small business owners don't even think about building their business for wealth or just building what they're doing for wealth. And they're concentrating on income, and income is short term. Tell me your experience about helping people build wealth. And in terms of maybe it's been an alien language to them, even haven't thought about it that way. Maybe they've been told just get a will and everything will be okay. Tell me about your experience.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's so many angles and nuances
Mm,
to this conversation. A lot of our beliefs come from a very young age,
right.
right? So it depends on, I'd say, the household that you lived in, the experiences that you've had, the language that was used around you when you were growing up. Because when we come to a place, what I'd say is when it comes to money and wealth, there is that fear. And I think for a lot of people, for example, I gave you my experience where the wealth just disappeared
Right.
in my view, but it actually wasn't the wealth part that was the issue. It was the fact that I had experienced loss there at an early age. My parents passing away
Mm,
gave me a script in my head that anything that is of value to me will be taken away.
the way. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I only figured this out in my late 30s, early 40s, that that's what was going on.
Wow.
So it manifested itself in terms of how I thought about money. I was very quick to give money away,
Mm,
you know. So someone like that who's maybe a giver will focus maybe on income because they're thinking about how can I spend this, how can I give it away, how can I support people, etc. A lot of small business owners are one trying to solve a problem, but they're also looking for a financial solution. I find most of the time, how can I either make enough money so I can leave my current role, or how can I make more money so I can support my family or build a lifestyle that I want. And all of that is about income and spending initially. And as you said, it's very short term. But there's the other side where there's building of assets that can actually work for you. And that business that you're building eventually should be something that has parts that work on autopilot, that
mm,
produce income for you, but the business itself should actually be growing in value, because that's where you now find people exiting businesses and suddenly they've got a large lump sum of money, which now gives
yeah.
so many options. And this is where you can now pass on the wealth to the next generation. So I've gone round the houses a little bit, but why I feel it's important, especially for small business owners, to focus on building wealth and not just income, is because when we build wealth, we're not only building wealth for ourselves as individuals, but it trickles down. It trickles down to our family, it trickles down to our communities. And sometimes you don't see it trickling down in monetary terms, but
Mm,
when people are watching you and the impact you're having and what you're building, they'll be thinking, I want to do that. If she can
mm.
do it, maybe I can do that. And can you imagine what that does for a community
Oh,
when
yeah.
everyone's thinking in that way? And for me, that's how I look at wealth. I've learned over the years that there's the financial side of it, but there's so much more to it. There's the spiritual side of it. There's the mental side of it. There's the community side of it as well.
So how does an ordinary business owner, a small business owner who's focused on, look, I need to bring enough sales in, I need to pay the bills, I need to focus on cash flow, and now you're telling me I need to really start thinking about the future. How does how can they start doing that in a very systematic way using your blueprint, your systems?
Yeah, so my blueprint has got seven steps to it, and I call it the C.H.O.I.C.E.S Blueprint.
Okay.
And the first step the Choices Blueprint is actually clarity. You know, where are you now in your personal life? Because let's face it, our personal life will impact the business, especially when we're starting out. So where are you now, and where do you want to be? And then we work on trying to plot out the different steps or the different stops that you need to go on. And I always use the analogy of, if you're planning for a holiday, we take a lot of time to plan our holidays, right, to the smallest minutia of how long do I want to have a layover if you're having connecting flights and all of that. But most things, especially money, we're not taking time to plan. So I think clarity is really important. What are you doing this activity for? What is the ultimate destination? And then from there, it's about putting together a plan. And I'm a strong believer in planning, because, there's that saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
And sometimes in our plan, we need to put up our hands and say, I need help. I've been building the wealth conversation for several years now, and it's been a labor of love, because I want to help people through financial coaching, but I was doing it alone for a very long time. And I recently got a virtual assistant, and it has changed my life, because it's helped me now focus on the income generating stuff, which is so important. So I'm a strong believer in finding one small thing that you can delegate. And yes, sometimes it will cost some money, but you may, think about it in a creative way. How can you maybe collaborate with other people?
Yeah.
Because collaboration actually helps to speed up, the journey. And you might find that it's actually easier to generate revenue by teaming up with other people.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the blueprint, and you take your clients through that step by step for them to get clarity on what it is they want to build. And do you find the wealth conversation a common thing, or that's something you're educating people into?
That it's definitely the latter. And it's funny, because I was actually having a conversation with somebody about my podcast, which is called The Wealth Conversation. And I was telling them how I came up with the name The Wealth Conversation. And again, it's because I went through a period where I wanted to talk to people about what I was going through financially. At that point in time, I had a lot of debt. I had a lot of shame. I was trying to do so many things, and you're trying to do this over here, trying to do that over there, and things weren't working. And I thought everyone around me had it together. And it took one conversation with a stranger to actually open up my eyes and get me to start thinking of things in a different way, but also take action on the stuff I was ignoring, i.e. the debt. So we are evolving. And it's in all communities. Sometimes people feel that certain communities are very, don't talk about money at all, and others are better at it. But I've found, I deal with high net worth people as an investment manager. I also deal with the average person when it comes to coaching, and we're all the same.
Right.
I would say we have our comfort zones when it comes to talking about wealth.
Okay.
And the biggest issue I've found is lack of confidence in what we know. So, for example, I always use the example of a woman who has a family and she's running a household. If you think about most households where there's a husband and a wife, the woman tends to be the one who's running the household. She actually makes financial decisions about how money is going to be spent. Every single day.
True.
But when it comes to personal finance, what I get a lot of the time is I don't know, my husband deals with that. And you think to yourself, you're making financial decisions every day. So I think we've been socialized in a way to view those financial decisions as not financial decisions. They're just things that you do.
Uh-huh.
But that's actually working that financial muscle. And if we talk more and more about the smaller things, it
Yeah.
becomes easier to start talking about what may seem like the big things, but actually the principles are the same.
And the principles, yeah, I love that. Yeah, the one thing I was to ask you is this: have you noticed the difference between how high net worth individuals treat money, talk about money, and also in terms within their family, or maybe talk to their children or other people around that money compared to ordinary common people who really don't have that high net worth, but just maybe above surviving, things are okay. Is there a difference in the conversation in terms of outlook, perspective, and what they treat in-house and how they converse?
Yeah, I would say yes.
Mm,
And I think the main difference is because these two groups are at different stages. So the high net worth has been that person who's trying to build that business or build that career. And so they've been through the stage of it's all about income, income, income. But
right.
they've also, whilst they've been producing the income, they've actually been setting aside, and maybe they were doing certain activities like investing, or even just simple saving. It's amazing how some of the high net worth people, all they did was put money in the bank, right, and save, but they were consistent with it. So they were consistent. They chose one thing and they focused on it, and they were consistent. And a lot of people talk about tithing. They're
Yeah.
very consistent with that, which is great. But I always say also think about giving to your future self.
Yeah.
Think about the future, also think about the unexpected. In terms of the conversations, of course, because we talk through our experiences, right? So if you've been through the journey of not having much
Mm,
wealth or money, and you've built wealth, or maybe you've inherited wealth and you're the custodian of this wealth, your outlook on life, your conversation will be different to someone who's just purely focused on just trying to build income, trying to build a business, because you're really focusing on that.
right.
But I think what I do see in the high net worth space is they're having those conversations constantly, and they're having conversations with different people. They have different groups that they have conversations with, and they know that with this group I'll be talking about this part of wealth, or with that group I'll just be talking about you know the leisure activities, whether it's golf or yoga or whatnot, or just life stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to be discerning about, and also, yeah, discerning, but also deliberate in finding people to have these conversations with, because it really does help to set the foundation. One thing I'll add, I do believe that for a long time, conversations about money and wealth have been kept quite closed.
Mhm.
But we're living in the internet age. There's so much information out there. It's a wonderful time actually to be trying to build wealth and a business, because there is so much more information out there. I
Yeah.
think what might be an issue is how to filter all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely right. I remember the turning point for me in terms of studying wealth, studying finance was having my first business, an IT business, which started losing money because my business partner had cheated and disappeared, siphoned money out of it. Now
Okay.
I'm borrowing money on credit cards and loans to the tune of 100,000. And I found myself broke and struggling. I felt like a failure.
Mm.
And I broke down and I fell into depression. But I started to realize, I started to think, how do wealthy people create wealth? How do successful business owners create successful businesses? Because certainly there's something I didn't know. I felt like such a failure in those days. This is nearly 20 years ago. And from that, I realized it's about learning this thing. And although I'd qualified with an MBA and I thought I knew about business, my business was failing, my finances were failing, my relationship, my marriage was failing, everything was failing. And it took personal development for me to understand that, look, for anything to change, I've got to change.
Yeah.
For my finances to change, I've got to study and change, and I've got to develop better and different habits in order for that to change. And so it's important. It's so great that what you're saying is it doesn't matter. We've all had childhood programming, childhood conditioning, and some of my childhood conditioning was if you want to make money, work hard. My parents
Mm.
worked very, very hard, so I worked hard until until I realized that, look, you've got to set up the right team, the right systems, the right processes. And so I was able to build these multi-million pound businesses. So that gave me the freedom. But I had to study that. I had to study wealth.
Mm.
And so when I come across your work in wealth coaches, I didn't find anyone like that back in the day. I read the books, I went to the seminars. That's what helped me, and I got coaching that helped me. So it's
Mm.
so important that you're doing the work you're doing. Now,
Thank you.
yeah, it's great work. Let me ask you, so if someone wants to create financial freedom or get to a certain age in their life, maybe your blueprint already has this, where they say, okay, by the age of 45 or 50, I want to be living in this country. I want to be doing this kind of work. I don't want to be, do you have a step by step you could take them through so that doesn't matter what age they are, when they reach that milestone, they've actually got that set up so they can have that, you want to call it financial freedom or whatever it is, so they can enjoy the life that they want. Or it could be something they want in the next 5 years or 10 years. I don't know.
Yeah. Great question. The choices blueprint is the blueprint.
Right.
First it's about clarity, right? And then it's about, as you touched on, looking at your habits and understanding what are these habits that are not serving me, and what are the habits that are serving me. So one of the habits that I have is I'm a planner. So I am very good at planning. I've got the spreadsheets and everything, but I'm also a giver. And the giving was destroying my ability to build wealth.
Right. Okay.
The giving. And so identifying those things is a game changer, I found, for a lot of people, because you end up finding that, and sometimes you find someone is more focused on the security aspect of life. So they're squirreling away money, they're not making that money work for them.
Mm.
And that could be maybe by trying to start a business, or even putting it in a high interest rate savings account, or looking at products that can make some of that money work for them. So there are all of these psychological things. And then we look at the third step, which is overcoming some of those internal beliefs that have been holding us back, and really understanding it. And looking at how we're spending our money, is the way you're spending your money speaking to what you're telling me you want to achieve in the next 10, 20 years?
Not
Is
gonna.
it telling me? Because I can tell a lot by looking at someone's bank statement.
Mm.
And I would encourage anyone listening or watching this podcast to actually print off 2 months worth of your bank statements, and just look at the numbers, look at where you're spending your money, and ask yourself, what is this telling me? Is this telling me a story? Is this the journey towards what my financial goals are, what my ultimate desires are for myself, my family, the next generation? It's fascinating. I love bank statements.
No, it's a good exercise to do. It sounds simple, but it's
Yeah.
so important. Many people don't do it. And that's one of the exercises I did years ago when I found myself struggling broke. I
Mm.
I did what you just said, and with a pencil and a spreadsheet, started to look at where is all my money going. And so as hard as it was, I started to cut out all the subscriptions for different things that were going out that actually I'm not using this, and
Yep.
minimize and simplify my expenses to the
Yep.
T and start managing my money in a totally different way. And it was one of the my mentor at the time was T. Harv Eker, who wrote the book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind.
Mm-hmm.
Great book. And I went to his seminar. It changed the way I approached money, the way I approached wealth, from being broke to become financially free to becoming a multi-millionaire. There were steps and there were habits. And often I say to people that your wealth or your business can only grow to the extent that you grow. So you've got to learn and become self-aware of your, like you said, Tsitsi, your habits, how you're spending your money, where is it going? And it takes a certain level of discipline to do that because not everyone has that discipline, right?
Yeah. Discipline and commitment, which is another step in the choices blueprint. You have to be committed to the plan. And that commitment will mean that sometimes people will say, oh, let's go on this trip, somewhere overseas, and you really want to go. You've always wanted to go to that place, but you say you can't go.
Uh-huh.
It's those things. It's normally those small little things that are the things that end up taking us off track. And then
Right.
suddenly it's 5 years down the line and you're thinking, oh my goodness. And I've been through that cycle many times where I'm going to save, I want to save, and I'm saving, saving, saving. Then my giving habit comes in. Someone needs help. How much do you need? I give it to them. And in my head, I've worked out how I'm going to kind of replace that money. But then it takes so much longer
Right.
to replace that money than when I was actually just being consistent and putting it, just putting the money aside. So being aware of the triggers, what are the things that cause you to go off track?
Right. Right. Right.
And there's so many, which is why I also talk about our mental well-being as being part of our wealth journey. This is not about do you have a mental illness or no, it's what are the triggers? We talk about it a lot when it comes to diet. I had a major sugar craving the other day. Let me tell you, I ended up buying a chocolate, a
Uh,
Coke, all
uh-huh.
the stuff and at the end of the day, I was thinking to myself, why did I do that?
Uh-huh.
So I now need to go back and what was the trigger? And we do that with money. Something triggers us. It could be an argument with someone. It could be something we've seen on social media. It could be a good news. Good news triggers maybe celebration. You go out or you meet up with people,
Mm.
and suddenly you're spending a lot when you're out.
Wow. Wow. That's a good point. See, I'm glad you said all that because people sometimes don't even think about it that unconsciously, maybe they've been triggered by an event
Yeah,
or by something they saw on Instagram unconsciously because they don't have that discipline in place. Fantastic.
yeah.
Listen, the how do you work with people in the sense that they come across you, they love what you're saying, and they make a decision that, look, this is what they want. How do you start working with them so that they can get onto that journey to create the kind of financial success or result they desire?
Sure. There's a few ways, but I guess the starting point is, I'd have a discovery call with them
Mm.
and find out exactly what it is that they are hoping to achieve. Because we all come with these grand ideas, and sometimes I have to bring them down to center and actually
Right.
say, okay, um, you've got a great income or your business is making a lot of money, but it's, the numbers aren't adding up. So there's something there. We have to build look at the foundation. And I always talk about building wealth like building a house.
Right.
A house has to stand on a very strong foundation, and that to build that foundation, the construction company has to dig down first.
Right.
So what we see of the house on the top is because of what is down underground. And that's what we have to do. Let's go deep. Let's unpick some of those habits, some of those triggers. Let's put a plan in place. And so I need to understand the individual first. Because I'll be honest, some people have come to me for coaching, and I've had to say to them, I can't help you at this point. What you need, first of all, is therapy, because some of the traumas we don't realize it until we're trying to get somewhere and we just can't get there. We just can't get there. So sometimes therapy is needed first to unpick, because I have worked with some people where there's been a lot of resistance. Okay. And it's not that they don't want to build wealth. It's not that they don't want to have money. It's not that they don't want a good life, but there's something there that's stopping them.
I agree.
Sorry, Karen.
I was going to say that deep-seated trauma or historical trauma that may be unconscious, may be the block that you're going through in terms of your business not growing, or your wealth not growing, or your money situation seems to be in a constant loop and cycle that nothing is improving. So I would agree with you that if that is you, do get coaching, do get therapy, do get support from a deep subconscious basis, that these things can be cleaned out, and so that they don't get in your way. And I suppose then Tsitsi can do what she needs to do from a foundational level to help you grow that empire, wealth that you want. Fantastic. Great. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's so important. And, I'll put my hand up. I didn't believe in any of that until I started understanding myself, and I started asking the questions. Why am I doing this? Why am I exhibiting this behavior? Why is the money adding up? It wasn't like I wasn't earning decent money, but why is all of this happening?
Right.
So now when I talk to people, I remember once talking to my daughter, because she came home from university and was acting really weird. And I said to her, show me your bank. And she had taken an overdraft, so she was in her overdraft. Oh, yes. And I had said to her, why are you doing this? Why? I told you not to get the overdraft. I told you that when you set up a bank account, the bank is going to try and give you a credit card and an overdraft. And it's so interesting to hear people's answers. And for her, it was really something that happened at school. She was comparing herself with somebody at school. That girl appeared to be from a wealthy family, and she seemed to be the one with all the friends. So, for my daughter, it was a case of, I need to appear to have money. And I wonder how many adults are in that loop.
Yeah.
And don't even know it.
You're absolutely right. I've got 3 children, 24-year-old, a almost 20-year-old, and a almost 18-year-old this year. And with all of them, since they were the age of 4 or 5, we've been talking money. By the age of 10, they could talk about liabilities, they could talk about assets, they could talk about expenses, they could talk about passive income. They understood what financial freedom is. But as they've grown older, the practical aspects of it, similar to your daughter, was sitting down with them and say, okay, let's have your bank statement. Let me see your budget sheet. So they got income and expense sheet. Okay. And they understand that they have to do whatever they have to do to keep spending less than they earn, right? And so it's simple, but so important. And if you were a child, or if you, even for yourself, look at it. Do a sheet. And maybe, I suppose, Tsitsi, you've got all these tools and frameworks that
there's a spreadsheet.
You've got
there's spreadsheets, there's workbooks.
There you go. You've got all that. That's why it's so important that people talk to you, because often we're not brought up that way. The school system is not set up that way. And people struggle, not knowing that there is another way of doing it, in a much simpler way, that when you follow it, things become easier, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know what needs to happen for the educational system to change. I know a lot of people are putting their voice to getting financial education into the education system here in the UK. It is so important. If I think about what I learned doing GCSE
Yeah.
maths, and I'm showing my age,
Uh-huh.
I don't even use it, right? But it's so
Right.
important to understand how credit works because, credit, some people view it as very bad. They don't want to touch it, but actually there's so many positive aspects if you know how to use it.
Have to use it.
And I love what you shared about how you talk to your children about wealth and how you've had that conversation with them. Not many people have got that confidence to talk to their children or family. And I think that's okay. It's more important to maybe find people or listen to people who can impart that information and knowledge. But I always say, whatever you hear, do your research as well. Find out for yourself, because there's the best way to learn and remember something and to act on something is if you go and you find out for yourself, do the research and understand it in your own way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It
Listen,
won't
Tsitsi,
sound daunting. Yeah.
exactly. For those who want to reach out to you and learn more from you or connect with you, what's the best and easiest way for them to do that?
So I would say the easiest way is to subscribe to the Wealth Conversation podcast. It's on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
I'll be releasing season 3 shortly, and there's a lot of information on how you can connect with me on the podcast channel. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I come up as Tsitsi Mutiti Chartered FCSI, but I'm sure if you just put Tsitsi Mutiti, you'll find me.
We'll put the details on the show notes anyway. Carry on.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. So those are the main ways. There is a Wealth Conversation Instagram page. I'm not very active because I'm very busy doing stuff. But I'd say the podcast is probably the best place, because there you can also get information, and I also interview guests who've got different skill sets to me in financial services, and that might be helpful.
Superb. I'm sure it will be. Listen, I want to say thank you, Tsitsi, for your wealth of knowledge, for your experience, for sharing from the heart and from experience exactly what's going on, and for being open to help people to do that. That takes a very special person to do that. So continue doing the work you're doing in this world. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor, and it's nice to be on the other side of the podcast equation for once. It's phenomenal. I also think you're doing amazing work, Mac. Keep pushing, keep helping people build wealth. It's so needed in many communities. And I guess for me, the last thing I'd like to say to everyone is, remember, it's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep.
Absolutely. And on that note, remember what we said at the end of the podcast, build your business for wealth, not just for income. Income is short term, wealth is generational and legacy. Keep doing what you're doing, build your business for wealth and freedom. Until we speak next time, thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, follow as well, depending on which channel you are on. Leave some notes as well. Ask some questions. What did you learn from Tsitsi today? And yeah, just ask some questions and let's make change happen. Tsitsi, thank you again. Until we speak again, bye for now.